Chelsea, the Good Food CFO podcast is currently on hiatus, but the news does not stop just because the podcast has taken a little bit of a break between seasons. And there's a lot going on right now around the Kroger-Albertsons merger, the FTC and other lawsuits that are happening, and also the support around this merger that is changing. So we are taking to YouTube over the next couple of days and possibly weeks to talk about what is going on around this merger. So what are you bringing to the table today for us to talk about?
So, Sarah, yes, absolutely. I want to start with the fact that the FTC did move forward with their lawsuit to attempt to block the merger from happening. That went to trial on August 26th in Portland, Oregon. But we recently saw that a few days before the trial started on the 26th, on August 19th, Kroger actually filed a countersuit in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Alleging essentially that the Federal Trade Commission is violating the US Constitution through this lawsuit. So they're suing them to try to block the whole essentially trial from going forward.
Okay. That's big.
Yeah, it is big. And for people who may not fully understand what's happening with the trial in Portland that the FTC brought, they're seeking essentially a judgment from this judge to put a stop to the merger until they're able to conduct their own in-house tribunal within the Federal Trade Commission. And that's where they're looking to really have an impact in the future of this merger. So they're just using this trial that's in the courts to give them more time to get to this other trial.
So the Kroger lawsuit against the FTC is essentially in an effort to stop that looking further into it from happening.
Yeah, they're alleging that it is a violation of the US Constitution to use an in-house tribunal to challenge this sort of merger.
May I ask the question here? And I don't know if you're equipped to answer this.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that this is literally the job of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, to do what Kroger is now saying is unconstitutional for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. The FTC typically enforces antitrust in one of two ways. It can either sue the companies and take them directly to court, right? And in that way, they're obviously getting a ruling from a judge and a jury.
Right.
Or they also have the oversight. They also have the ability, right, to use their in-house administration of law judges to issue a ruling or even reach a settlement, right, outside of the court. So it doesn't have to go through the courts. As I said before, they are seeking both options in this case because they are trying, they feel like they're on a timeline and they need to stop the merger now to give them the time to have that in-house tribunal.
Right. Sort of pause the merger.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Exactly.
Right.
But like I said, Kroger is saying that this is unconstitutional. There's actually two things that they're calling out here.
Okay.
They're in their lawsuit, they're stating that the administrative law judge in the tribunal, right, in the FTC is not removable by the President of the United States.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure why that makes it unconstitutional.
Sounds like other courts.
Yeah. And that the case is being fought in the executive branch instead of the courts.
Okay.
Maybe, yes. I mean, it's both, right?
Right.
So that's where I'm really I'm struggling to understand why or what leg they have to stand on. Again, I'm not a lawyer, right? So I'm sure they'll find a way to make the argument. But unfortunately, the thing that's kind of scary here is that earlier in the summer, the Supreme Court actually had a ruling that was geared towards the SEC and more around fraud trials or the way that the SEC handles fraud cases. But their ruling basically limited the power of the SEC to unilaterally enforce these financial fraud regulations, meaning
Right.
they limited their power to use their own in-house administrative court and tribunals.
Got it.
And so that's where what I've read, at least about this case, that's what people have a concern about, is that Kroger might find a leg to stand on here because of
Mhm.
that ruling from the Supreme Court.
Right. If if Kroger is successful in things not moving forward internally within the FTC, can there be further trials in the courts that could still put a pause or a full stop on this merger, or is like all hope lost if Kroger is successful?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I
Mhm.
would imagine that there are ways that that the Federal Trade Commission can use the court going forward. But one of the people that was quoted in the article that I read, which again, all of the articles that we talk about today, we're definitely going to have links for down
Sure.
in the description,
Yep.
for anybody who's, wanting to read more. The article quoted an antitrust law professor at Vanderbilt. Her name was Rebecca Allensworth. And I think she said it really perfectly, right? She said that if the FTC loses this case, if Kroger wins this lawsuit, it essentially takes an arrow
Mhm.
out of their quiver, right?
Yeah.
It takes away one more way that they have to go after these kinds of, mergers.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm putting myself into the shoes of Kroger and Albertsons here, this is an attempt to say, okay, FTC, you may win in this trial that is currently going on in Oregon. But even if you do, we're going to stop you from moving forward with what your next steps are, right? So I understand, as the lawyers, right, and as the corporations who want the merger to go through, that they're taking any steps that they possibly
Of
can.
course.
So I understand the why, and I guess at this point all I have is hope that they won't win that particular lawsuit.
Yeah, and even further than that, if they do win that lawsuit, right? I think it has implications for the future of not just consolidation, but specifically consolidation in the food industry. I mean, right
Yeah.
now we're looking at a possible acquisition of Kellanova by Mars,
Right.
and I don't want to get too far into that story right now, but a couple of things that I did read about this proposed acquisition is that it would then make Mars Kellanova among the top 5 packaged food and beverage conglomerates in
Right.
the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Significantly larger than companies like Kraft, Heinz, Campbell's, General Mills. I mean, these are
Yeah.
huge companies.
Yeah.
So it's a very precarious position that we're in right now to see what happens. The impacts of this trial, not just the one that Kroger has
Yeah.
set, but the one going on in Portland, and then ultimately the in-house tribunal with the FTC, has implications on the future of the food industry.
Yeah. And I think we're in a bad spot now as it is with the capabilities of the FTC. And again, a conversation for another day of how we've gotten to where we are now, and to think that there could be less oversight and less control over the prevention of monopolies and oligopolies. I think I'm saying that right. That's concerning. And as supporters of the good food industry, it's like the brands and the businesses that we work with every day, the retailers, the independent store owners, they're doing everything that they can, but the fight becomes so much harder. And the responsibility becomes so much greater if mergers like this Albertsons Kroger go through and the
Yeah.
Mars Kellanova go through. And so yeah, it's a big deal, and we're going to keep on watching and keeping everybody updated with what's happening here.
Exactly, Sarah. We're going to have more updates here on the channel. And so if you aren't subscribed and you're not getting updates, just click on the button below and make sure you know when our next video comes out.